Issa. He is the third-term congressman from California's 49th District and is becoming quite the player in the Republican Party. Please welcome our friend, Representative Darrell Issa. Darrell, how you doing, Congressman? How are you? Okay. So I want you to forget all we've argued about here before, and
God forbid.
Let's move on to another topic, which is oil.
Yeah.
Because I have to
God
ask
forbid.
you, you're a friend of our show, but I have to ask the tough questions. You were a baby drill guy, and I saw recently Arnold Schwarzenegger, Republican governor of the state, kind of reversed himself on that and said, you know what, gee, if what was going on in the Gulf was happening off Santa Barbara like it once did, it wouldn't be good for us. Do you have any second thoughts about drill, baby drill?
First of all, I looked at all those states up there, and I'm glad California wasn't on the list.
Considering our budget, we squeaked by.
We squeaked out of that one.
Because we have a pretty stupid way of making a budget.
I think you slipped Alabama in instead of us, so I appreciate that. Hey, come on. You know, we could do things that dumb here, too, I'm afraid, including our budget. Back to the oil. Maybe British Petroleum is responsible, but if we don't change government in the way that they are allowing oil companies...
Are you talking about the Minerals Management Service?
MMS.
Okay, I must say, and I bet you a lot of people would agree with me, even people who follow the news, I never heard of this group. The Minerals Management Service. If you heard of that, you are a news junkie. But these are the people who are supposed to monitor and regulate our offshore drilling. It seems like a case of what goes on everywhere else in this country. The people who are supposed to regulate are just not ever regulating. They're in bed with the people they're supposed to be regulating.
Well, in the case of MMS, literally in bed, one of their people got pregnant while overseeing that.
That is, in fact...
And just so you understand, I understand she's still on the job, but she does have an expanded family to support now. Okay, it's not that good, but I work.
Maybe...
The fact is, this is
maybe if we put a containment device on her.
Absolutely. Bill, there are 1,700 people in this service. It's buried way down in the Department of Interior, but it had a great IG who report after report would tell us what's wrong. My committee investigated it. We made recommendations to break it up. Nothing's happened. In fairness, now that we have a disaster in the Gulf, Secretary Salazar, the president himself, is saying, okay, we got to break these guys into two dysfunctional organizations deep down under the Department of Interior. One of our challenges is this group...
Isn't that better?
No, this group has to be elevated so it's as much...
Isn't it better to separate the people who take the money from the people who give out the regulations?
But you shouldn't have it...
I mean, that seems like
absolutely, except for one thing.
Obama's for it, so it's a shit
No,
idea.
no.
That's the only reason why it's a bad idea. Come on.
Look, you thought he was smarter till you found out he prayed. So let's remember that, how much can you defend Obama praying every morning?
Doubling down on Afghanistan, rendition. There's a lot of things I don't like, but
he'll do better in his second term.
You work with what you got.
Bill, the fact is, breaking up the part that collects the money from the part that does oversight, absolutely. At the same time, like the IRS, who we all know how kind and gentle they are in collecting money, the fact is, this has to be an organization that doesn't sleep with the enemy, doesn't worry about whether they offend those companies, doesn't look for all of the, quote, safety features coming from oil reports, and they haven't been that way for at least 10 years under now 3 administrations. So before we do drill, baby, drill, and I never said drill, baby, drill, but my party did, we have to say drill safely or don't drill at all.
Distance he's putting himself there. Okay. What do you think about the fact that the oil companies go in and they get people to sign waivers? This happened also in Alaska with the Exxon Valdez. They destroy your job with their spill. And then the people are so desperate for money that they go in and they offer you a job to clean up the crap that wrecked your job. And then they make you sign a waiver saying that when you get sick cleaning up this toxic crap, you won't sue them or talk about them.
Well, the good news is those voters said, hell no. Bill, of all the tragedies that we have had during this administration and even the previous administration, this is the most preventable, man-made fiasco that we have seen not including the wars that you have a few comments on. This is clearly a self-inflicted wound that we cannot tolerate again. 40 years ago in Santa Barbara, they drilled and didn't bother to have protection. It blew up, and we ended up with oil all over our beaches. Now, 40 years later, what do you find? You find that they didn't have safety features that were properly redundant. Back in 2000, they said, we've got these new standards. In 2003, they got a report paid for by MMS, Mineral Management Service, that said, hey, these safety features aren't quite so reliable. It's 85 pages of saying you got to do better. And what did they do? They said, we'll use either one because we can't find either one being good enough.
Let me ask you about another issue, which is Miranda rights. You know, this guy, Fazal Shahzad, the Times, Fashizzle, I call him, the Times Square barber. You know, this is something the Republican Party has been making big hay of, that we should not have read him his Miranda rights. What happened was he made a bomb out of, you know, I don't know, soda cans or something. It didn't go off. He was questioned for 9 hours before they read him his Miranda rights under a law that was passed in 1984. That is a public safety exception to Miranda. They did this specifically for this reason. If there's an emergency situation, we got to question the guy before we read him his rights. And he sung, he talked endlessly. They couldn't get him to shut up. Then they read him his Miranda rights, and he kept talking. Why isn't this enough? Why are people like McCain and Lieberman calling for the abolition of all Miranda rights to anybody who's a suspected...
How about Eric Holder, who called for it in front of my committee this past week?
Yes.
Look, there is a distinct possibility that a senator running for his life against a further to the right candidate in the primary only days away might want to look tough. But what's the reason that Eric Holder is throwing away constitutional protections that have been long successful in our country?
I know, it's political. I mean, he has backed himself into a corner by saying that we are going to prosecute these guys as common criminals. He is realizing, rightfully so, that down the road, one of these guys might get off on some kind of legal technicality as a result of not being properly questioned.
He said, don't worry, we won't release them anyway.
He realizes this is dangerous. There was a great Dallas Morning News headline on this when he gave this press conference that said, Holder discovers terrorism. I mean, it's that political.
If I may be the apologist for Holder for a second, because I happen to occasionally talk to people at the State Department, he was not suggesting we throw out Miranda rights. First of all, Miranda rights is the verbal affirmation of rights that exist that you cannot get rid of. And what they're simply looking to Congress to do is to get a clarification as it applies to terrorism. In 1984...
Well, Corey, that's not what he said. What he said is he needs a longer period. He needs distinctly more time to do things before giving Miranda, but still using it in prosecution. Remember, this is about prosecuting people before you told them the rights, what they said or did.
Exactly.
If this was only about finding the ticking bomb and stopping the bomb, we wouldn't have this discussion. It's about whether they can take what they took from some scared young kid or some terrorist, whichever they are, and use it. Because if we extend this, then everybody will have the same problem, which is the police will say, well, I thought it was an emergency, I thought this, and the kid will sit in jail for what he didn't.
The larger point is that, look, the public safety exception did work. He talked for hours before, he talked after. The larger problem is that everyone is still politicizing terrorism abroad and at home, and we should know better than that by now. You know, and it's just cheap and stupid using it as political.
Speaking of the police, before we run out of time, I want to ask one more thing, because there have been 2 videos we've seen in the last couple of weeks from cops tasering people. There was the one guy at the Phillies game, kid ran out on the field.
Was that a cop? Can you be that out of shape and still be a cop?
Have you ever been to a donut shop? Can you be out of shape and be a cop?
But that out of shape.
I think it's a requisite. And then there was a guy who was at a golf tournament last week. I think he was heckling Tiger Woods, and the cops tasered him. You know, shouldn't law enforcement people be able to handle a guy who's had a few too many Bud Lights without coursing 50,000 volts through his body? I mean...
this is just lazy. I mean, you know, we developed the taser as an alternative to shooting and clubbing, not running, you know? So don't tase them, bro. They're going to be okay.
Look, I run a police department, And
you run a police.
I run a police department.
You have a chief of police, though, right?
I do, but I get very hands-on. And we have, first of all, not all cops are out of shape. We have very courageous men and women every day in this country that run into buildings where people.
But you do have donuts.
And put donuts up. We have donuts. But please, it's a very honorable profession.
Absolutely.
And right now there are people putting their lives on the line in dangerous areas. And we just had our honor awards in the city of Newark honoring our police officers. We honored a number this year who showed restraint, who did not use deadly force, even though they were justified in using it. And to me, that's the ultimate courage, is to have the ability to use power and to show restraint. This taser idea, we don't do it in Jersey. It's outrageous, and I think it's something that, as you said, lazy cops are going to use not to do their real job of showing restraint and subduing people.
All right.
Properly.
Both things are true. We have to say goodbye to the panel.